I'm a Pokemon master and I gotta catch them all.
Well, he's trying to play Pokemon. We're playing Yu-Gi-Oh. Sorry, Dylan. Trap card activated.
I feel weird.
Change of heart. If you're watching me on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment. I do answer those. And sometimes I answer them in a sassy way.
Especially with someone like you with power, it's very important to like ask myself, like, if I can't do anything about this and my platform is so big that this is inevitable, is my platform simply too big? Because you say that you're doing this for entertainment so that we can get more views and stuff like that. But it's also at the point where it can't. Yeah, well, part of it, sure. And I do understand that you have some sort of positive, well-meaning view in your mind. I'm not saying that like you're weaponizing your ambivalence, but I do think that the ambivalence is part of the issue of how stuff like this can happen, and it goes unrecognized because
oh, nice.
I like
the etymology of the word violence comes from the same root as violation.
I'm sorry, but harassment is violence. Like, no matter who it's against, but it's a much different form of violence for trans people, especially when it's
to go after, pursue with vigor or desire.
Feels like in these spaces we can't go and make one wrong statement without having us like literally like there's being dogpiled on a panel. That's one thing. Then there's being dogpiled behind the scenes, where like you can't go anywhere without and say anything without being discredited immediately and told how much of an awful.
Or having a fucking hate raid come in because some fucking piece of shit has Chatterino'd your name, and they're gonna throw a fucking hate raid in wherever you show up.
This is violence in this way, though, at least in our society, because the difference
Sorry,
is,
I got a little.
there's difference. I don't.
Not Dylan. Not Dylan. Dylan's not post left.
I see how that.
As Dylan said to you, he doesn't consider himself a leftist, which is something I've been trying to get across. Did you know that when I talked to Dylan, like when Dylan's audience was like arguing with me in the comment section, they would maintain that Dylan was a leftist. They were sure that Dylan was a leftist. I don't think he was actually portraying himself that way. Maybe he wasn't like denying it like he did, you know, when you talked to him, but like, yeah, he's not. And, you know, he says it here, and, you know, I think he understands that, right? If part of his audience doesn't, there were people following Dylan last year that thought that they were doing leftism. That's wild. It's fucking wild.
Could easily be used in a certain way that would be dishonest, because this is how it'll be framed. How it's going to be framed is Dylan is bringing trans people on a show, and then people are violent towards them, and people are going to hear that and they're going to think, holy shit, people are getting like stabbed on Dylan Byrne's panel.
No, okay, I 100%
that's because that's how society. But
Dylan, are you going to wait until one of us ends up like unalived? Is that what it's going to take for you to do something? Because Dylan, the threat's been put out there. I've been fucking threatened with that shit by somebody that sounded like they weren't fucking kidding, okay? So please miss me with this like, oh, did you get threatened in your DMs? Yeah, I got threatened with unconsensual sex and getting unalived in Roblox and Minecraft. Yes, yes, Dylan, that's exactly what fucking happened. And yeah, oh no, it wasn't just in DMs. Oh my God. If you had any idea what I've fucking been through in the past year, you wouldn't be so strident about this shit. Yeah, your shit can have an effect, okay? Now, I want to make real clear, and I said this earlier, okay? I don't think that Dylan gave anybody marching orders. There's no way. I don't think he would do that. I don't think that's the kind of guy he is. Like, he might act like a mafia tough, right? Sometimes in stream, but he's not actually one, okay? He just doesn't realize that there are messed up people out there that take what he says way too fucking seriously, or that think that they can curry favor with people like him. That anytime you got an ego the way that this guy does, you are setting up a situation where messed up people think that they're gonna get a reward from you, and when you give them mod like you did to Zonia. Mod for literally like recording, you know, I would say possibly violating two-party consent, although, you know, that's a tricky legal question, and I'm not here to answer or ask legal questions, right? You know, you're setting a bad precedent. You're setting up, there's gonna be more fucking spying. There's gonna be more of this bullshit, right? You absolutely do have an impact on this, although I do not think that you intended any of the things that happened to me. And I don't think that most of your audience is like that, okay? It's just the rare, exceptional individual. And Dylan, you got those people in your audience. Hate to break it to you. You got those people, whether they're chasing your favor or whether they're, just that much of a stan, right? Or maybe you have a little bit more of a parasocial relationship with you, like in Zonia's case, right? It's a dangerous situation.
A specific kind of violence, because I think we're watering down.
He doesn't understand stochastic terrorism.
This is the violence of cis and heteronormativity that happens, where people in their minds find it easier to delegitimize the trans people in your spaces, especially like the so-called centrist, than they do to legitimize.
Are people violent?
I mean, that is what happens when you refuse to apologize, where you act like you could never be wrong, when you portray yourself in a state of like utter strength and always being correct. That is what happens, right? That is the effect of that. You're training these people you're eroding their critical thinking skills and encouraging more parasocial behavior.
With conservatives on my show.
This platform is overblown.
I'm not going to say zero.
See, this becomes like worthless then,
How come your community is both good at doing what they do to react to reactionaries and fascists as they do to the trans people who they disagree with?
What?
In the past, I have seen your community go absolutely apeshit on people.
Oh, I'm sorry, chat. I didn't mean to say Neo More. I meant to say Sleepy CLX.
People who were disagreeing with you at the time.
Yes.
I don't. I'm impervious to it. In fact, like I have a great privilege there, where I just emotionally disconnect from anything that happens online. If I'm being serious.
Oh yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Watching that
Ninetails.
happen was like, oh
Yeah,
my
everybody
God,
go follow
like,
Ninetails if you're not
can these
already.
people not just be wrong once on something without absolute backlash. Now, I'm going to give you some credit here. Probably a lot of people who act as part of your community who come from these other reactionary places, reactionary communities that find out about you through your show. But as a whole, as like a social dynamic, when I say that it's forcing people out, well, forcing people, especially marginalized groups, out of anywhere is violent. I'm sorry, that is just a social justice perspective of violence. Even if you're not a leftist, social justice is like a very liberal thing. So,
Violent, but I always
willing to ask the question of where it is, but like the problem is like you can't be finding reasons to be like, oh well, it's too mystical for me, because that's the issue, is that it's meant to be subversive.
Having trans people forced out of a space is bad, but there's a difference between verbally like being like insulting somebody to the point where they don't want to be in a space anymore, and somebody takes a bat and like beats somebody, right? There's a huge gap between.
There's a huge gap
here. But when people hear violence,
oh my God, there's a huge gap there. Dylan, are you gonna wait till the baseball bat fucking?
It's physical force. People think of this physical force. It's a huge barrier that people jump from the internet, online, talking in chat rooms, to the use of physical violence, which is how people describe violence. But if they hear violence, they don't think that somebody just ratioed somebody else on Twitter or harassed them in private or anything like very like mean rhetoric towards them that is like over the line.
Like, why are we talking about couples?
Use these words. It's in reference to
Where did the ratio
force.
thing come from?
If it's threats. Yeah, that's the threat of violence. The threat of violence, yes.
But I'm saying, like, they're like, as much as you think it's a leap, like, no, it's more of just like a downhill slippery slope, where yes, like threats might be more rare than like being told that you're not a real woman, and then being told that you're not being a real woman might be relatively rare to like having like a big streamer do a stream specifically on you and how dumb all of your points are, as if you didn't make one single good point, which by the way is all too common in this space. I think like the contribution of this has created like a net narrative that the trans people in this space are too complainy, but in reality, like we're like when we're saying please don't make us feel forced out, that's literally the other way of saying like please don't de facto gatekeep us, right? So when we're talking about all the ways this stuff happens, and like to be super vigilant, I think like the first thing that you need to avoid doing is being like, oh, well, here's like all of these excuses I have to not be on board with this. It's like, and if you're bringing up like the definition of violence thing for some other reason, I'm sorry. I was just like, that's how I took it.
Okay. I guess for me, when I hear violence, this has escalated the situation way past any just conversation happening on the internet or debate or argument to a point where I need to get law enforcement involved, right?
Well,
and
Dylan,
threats
are you going to send law enforcement out of after like Irene has a big nose? Like, you know, like you don't, that's the problem, right? They use methods that aren't traceable. There's no cop that's gonna fucking, you know what I mean? Like nobody's gonna fucking, I don't know, like I don't know what you think is gonna happen, right? But if they're doing it through these kind of means that they actually use, the law enforcement's not gonna be involved because law enforcement doesn't know who to go after. Law enforcement doesn't know who the nameless, faceless troll is, right?
I said this is subversive, right? Like, hopefully, like am I not getting through? So what that
is like subversive violence, so like institutional violence, or like violence that, like what do you, like?
Meow.
Like
if it's
violence
institutional is from like the abilities that are given to people through the platform. As far as like it's more of like a social violence, like I said, where people don't feel like they're strong enough to be in these spaces, so they feel inadequate or they don't feel.
Well, then there will always be violence in my community, though. Then I'm using violence. I use violence when I say I don't think you're good enough to be on my show.
Okay, so what I'm saying is when people are already putting a lot on the line and risking a lot of stuff to be on your show.
I don't think this guy gets it. I don't think that this guy knows what we risk every fucking day to stand up for trans people. He has no fucking clue.
There's nothing that you can actually do because, like it's bad enough.
Is he starting to? Yeah.
I can't believe I even have to point this out. It's bad enough that I can't name names without worrying that something will generate.
Okay, so I don't like that. For me, I feel like that's pretty. Like if I was to you, like I'd be like, you know, you've done some terrible things to some people, and you're like, who? I was like, oh, I can't say. So you see how frustrating that is?
Confrontations with these people talking to you about it. You're just ignoring that.
Well, is this about nocommentchick? Is that what this is about, or is this about like who?
Multiple people.
Okay, well then, if I've disagreed with it at the time, then I probably have valid reason. I probably agree with myself.
And again, I pointed out at the beginning, he doesn't still agree with himself. He admitted to Xanderhall that he was wrong. He just wasn't a big enough man to admit that to me, right? Because he feels vulnerable. He feels called out. He felt overmatched. He didn't know the subjects that I was trying to talk about with him, right? And he didn't have any excuse for letting Rob Nora machine gun fucking tropes at his audience, right? But you did admit that to Xanderhall, okay? And like, I'm glad. You know you fucked up there. You won't admit it to me, but you admitted it to Xanderhall. So, you know, I mean, I guess it only took you 6 months, Dylan. It only took you 6 months.
Convenient. I'm saying,
but it's also very convenient that you can't even name names, so we just gotta say the specter of trans people are against you, Dylan. Like it's
because there's too many there's too many fucking people at this point, right? And if she wanted to go with me, then she's erasing like 5 other people that also have valid claims, right? It's not just about me. It's not just about one person. It's a fucking pattern, Dylan. It's a pattern.
If they want to bring up this stuff to you or like talk about more general things, if that works better, because it's certainly not just limited to your space.
Yeah, right? He's only held how many panels?
Yes, is violent. And it's a trend. The trend of violence is specifically not being treated as viable the moment that we have a bad take. Whereas think about the counter reality for a reactionary. You're literally treated as viable for having a bad take.
If you having this discussion with me right now caused me to shut down Hippie Dippie, would that be you using using violence to take down my platform? Because you intimidated me out of me possibly like wanting to continue to do this?
This really comes back to me like getting people to ask if a true ally would use their platform in the way that.
Could you answer my question? Like,
That's not my goal.
Well, your goal isn't to answer my question?
Dylan, you're so fucking fragile. When did Ninetails mention, like, you know, ending the Hippie Dippie? Like, I feel like you mentioned ending the Hippie Dippie. I feel like you're having second thoughts about this. I feel like I've heard you express doubt in what the overall effect of this platform is, right? Dylan, go with that. That's not weakness, that's strength. That's your actual strength starting to awaken. Let it, okay? Jeez, you don't fucking get it. Overcoming dominance paradigm is a way to build strength. It's like flexibility, right? You know, there's strength and there's flexibility, right? If you can't get past dominance paradigm, you're like the reed that's dried out, and when the wind blows, you're gonna snap in half, right? If you can get past that and realize that there's more to life than fucking your ego, for instance, then you might actually learn to bend and sway in the wind, and you might be a little bit more durable, and stuff like your platform might be a little bit like more helpful, because I know that you don't like at some level you want to help, right? I never thought you were a bad guy. I never thought you were like an irredeemable, just, you know, asshole, right? But you are very much a creature of the perverse incentives of these platforms, right? You are very much somebody who's never gotten past his own dominance paradigm, right? I think there's a strength in that you don't even recognize.
Well,
like, do you know, like the thing is, like, you never asked, right? But the reason I was having you on is because I was hoping that it would give you an out. I was hoping that it would give you a chance to say, you know what, that wasn't great, and there's a real simple solution. Like, bigots don't get to Gish Gallop. Maybe nobody gets to get Gish Gallop. If you want to be, you know, even-handed and say you're even-handed with the right and the left, you know, just maybe take that tool out of Rob North's arsenal any way you can, even if it's like, you know, even if it's a bilateral disarmament, right? I mean, I don't think you want Gish Gallops going on. I just don't think you realize how pernicious they can be in this situation, right?
Bringing this up, and it's
this use of the word violence just feels so flimsy, right? Because then I'm being.
Oh wait, she is saying it. Shut down Hippie Dippie. We can do better.
You're being violent towards me. I'm being violent towards you by not letting you on my show. We're all being violent towards everybody.
Well, no, I'd love to have another discussion on how violence exists beyond physical and systemic means. But I feel like that's besides the point, considering what I'm saying is, again, this is like, these are all cases for why people would validly be suspicious of your usage of the platform.
Okay, but I'm just saying that what you're saying right now could easily just be used against, like, I'm being violent towards you by not having you on. You're being violent towards me if I end up shutting down my show, or even if I don't end up shutting down my show because of this conversation.
Also, like, notice how there's no recognition of a power dynamic in Dylan's analysis, right? That's a huge missing piece, right? It's an irreconcilable missing piece.
You're being violent against sex, right? I said your space is violence against trans people.
My space is violence against trans people. Okay, because of the harassment that can. Yeah, there's this trend of hostility against trans people, and you specifically, by being more selective of them than you would be of reactionaries, pretty much like negates our ability to speak on a broader level than we would be. And wouldn't the violence just get worse then? Not to mention, this means I'm violent towards basically everybody is having violence against them on my platform then, especially the right-wingers. They're then going to be the main victim of violence because they're the main victim of people who are actually going.
Part of this.
Does anybody remember who it was that I called the Jackson Pollock of, what I was saying is they were using like this like sort of appeal to moral relativism. Well, if everything's violence, then, oh God, I think it was Mr. Girl actually. I think I said, like, TikTok, get ready. This is probably going up on you, okay? Mr. Girl, is the Jackson Pollock of culture. There you have it. Mic drop.
Just raising awareness of the fact that when trans people come on, they're facing violence. And like you said, they should know this. But on the other
then everybody's facing violence. It's like a death rumble in there. You can barely get out alive.
But on the other hand, by making sure that reactionaries have a more frequent voice on there and a more diverse voice, and that they can constantly treat the discussion as if they won because it constantly comes back up again as if they haven't lost, it's way more conducive to their status quo, like keeping the way things are, which is keeping trans people out, than like actually creating an environment which actively brings trans people in despite the inherent violence of things when you just let go of the controls.
Do you mind if I open?
Mr. Geek, what have you to say?
All right.
What have you to say, Geek?
Real quick. I like to learn from my mistake, but for that I need to have mistake to learn from. For that I need.
And that's the problem. There's the problem with Dylan. He never has mistakes. So how can you expect him to learn when he never does anything wrong? And the whole entire time I've known him, he's never had one bad take. So what? I don't know what you can expect from him.
Examples. I need something, and I understand that like.
Can we talk about this in private some other time? Maybe then, just because, like I said, I'm 100% from my experiences firsthand. I'm comfortable with bringing up people's names in a way like this.
I need
That's
names.
Wait, what was Mr. Geek trying to bring up? Ninetails, what was Mr. Geek trying to talk about? What Okay, so what he was getting at is like, just name a situation. Well, Dylan was in one time possibly a little bit wrong. I cannot think of one myself. I do not think it exists. Perhaps I don't know. What do you think he's supposed to do with this?
Hey, but I'm gonna be clear though that I'm going to just say, I mean, this is worthless to me because you're saying there's these issues. What are they? And then you can't say any. And nobody should really believe you if you're not. But you haven't given any examples of this really playing out in real time on my show that like has been brought to my attention, or like, hey Dylan, this is how violence on your platform led to, because we're using the word violence here, right? And when we're using these words, like this escalates the conversation, right?
Like,
we do real.
Does Dylan know that I got threats? Like threats to violate my sexual consent? Threats to unalive me in Roblox and or Minecraft? Does he fucking know this shit? Does he know like what the fucking ripples of the shit that he said about me were? Does he have any fucking clue? Because he was talking about like DMs, right? He thinks that the worst you get is like fucking, I got some nasty DMs, but I can handle, oh my God, Dylan, have you seen me in the comment section, right? Have you seen me in the comment section, Dylan? I can fucking handle my shit, all right? If it's a back and forth in comments, fine. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about fucking threats. We're talking about like systemic harassment. We're talking about like, you know, lies being spread about you. You did that yourself to me, right? You spread fucking lies about me. No, dude, no.
Like saying, hey Dylan, somebody after your show was called a slur, and that's terrible, is different than, hey Dylan, after your show someone had
no idea, does he? He has no fucking clue.
Here, or like,
sorry, really? I didn't know, but I'm not trying to have anyone take away that like your show causes physical violence. I do think that exclusion can be emotionally violent on trans people, so we have to consider that.
Who did we exclude?
Geek.
I'm sorry, like, you...
No, here's the thing, Ninetails. If you brought up me, then you would say, okay, so no comment chick, she was asking for a very simple thing. She wanted you not to get rid of Rob Noor, not to never have another conservative on, but to, like, when somebody like that starts to gish gallop, to do something about it, right? So that you don't get like transphobic brainworms just out into the audience, right? That's really pernicious. That's really bad. That's really harmful. That was what I was trying to bring up. Now, if you'd done that, he would have done the same thing to you that he did to me. He would have said, actually, Ninetails, it's not about Rob Noor. It's about Demon Mama's pronouns. And whether or not she'll accept they, them pronouns, even though she told you to your face that she, her are her preferred pronouns, right? or it becomes about your ex's like pronouns and whether my chat was trying to figure those out because they wanted to correctly gender your ex, right? And like, I'm not a big fan of anybody talking about anybody's like SO family member. Like, I don't like to bring that in, okay? But I think my chat was, for some reason that came up because there was an issue of pronouns or something like that, and they wanted to know what the correct pronouns were. You turned that into I don't remember, what was it? She's like questioning, or I don't know. It was a ship of Theseus argument, right? Like, you were trying to make something out of nothing because you got caught doing something kind of fucked up and you didn't want to deal with it. You did eventually admit it was a problem when you were on Xanderhall, right? When you were talking to Xanderhall later that year. But yeah, no, this was obfuscation. And Ninetails, you would have gotten the same obfuscation. And had you not paid really close attention to that entire drama, which I wouldn't expect you to, it's too much. It's honestly too much. It's too many VODs, right? If you'd paid attention, you know, and some of them might even be down, right? Because when Dylan had, you know, issues himself, like, right, when Dylan, you know, had to, you know, take care of his own health, right? I think I remember I took down a bunch of videos because I didn't think that my videos had anything to do with what he was going through, and he confirmed that later, right? That his issues were personal, were private, were family in nature, right? And that needs to be respected. That needs to be left alone. But he yeah, it would be hard for you to put that together, and unless you had every single way that he obfuscated, he would have led you around in a circle, basically, which is what he did to me, right? And that's what they do. They have a bigger microphone, they have a bigger megaphone, they have parasocials that just cannot possibly fathom disagreeing with them. And they just lead you around in circles, right? You make a good argument that they can't combat, they change the subject. And now it's about Demon Mama's fucking pronouns, right? Jesus Christ. Yeah, it would have been a mess. I'm glad you didn't go there. I'm glad you didn't know there.
Bring up issues, like, this is the problem, and this is the thing
And
that
this is the problem with the issue, though. You don't understand how this trend itself is so harmful for trans people that we need to actually start doing something to prevent.
You had to get 2-on-1'd by Mr. Geek and Dylan at the same time.
Whereas, like, you're like, oh, well, why can't you bring up names? Why can't you?
En même temps.
Dylan, not for me. That argument works for Dylan, it doesn't work for me.
Okay.
I don't even know if it works for Dylan.
I don't have a big platform. I don't have, like, all of the issues that you could get.
You have a big platform in France, though. No, Mr. Micho Geek, you have a big platform in France, right? People in France, they really appreciate a French Canadian like Mr. Geek, right? They really appreciate a man who can craft a perfect bowl of poutine. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly because I don't. I'm kidding. Sorry, it's a very old joke between Geek and myself, right? And I'm sure he appreciates it greatly. Don't you, Geek?
This kind of
you greasy fingered poutine eater. I'm sorry.
And if there isn't meat, there is then about
Listen. If you aren't racist against Quebecois, then why do you hate being called a poutine eater? I don't understand. You think you're so much better coming from France? Oh, I'm not sure about that. I think that a Quebecois could probably kick your ass in hockey, and that means more to me, honestly. That means more to me.
And that's the problem. And like,
that's me. That's true. That's
prescription.
See,
I'm trying to look to.
That's an ad hom. This is what people are talking about when they say the toxic no comment chick community. Yeah, the toxic.
To ways like
Mr. Geek and his fake Eiffel Tower.
Bring this kind of issue. I'm trying to look for ways to make stuff better, but no one is capable to come up with a single fucking example of this shit happening. And that's the thing that's triggering. That's why I don't take.
You're triggering. I'm triggered.
I mean, like, if like trans people come to you and say we feel forced out, and
like we gotta get him cussing in French. We gotta get at least like
solutions, and that's enough.
Oh yeah, I better not say. I don't know. Wait, I can't say. Can I?
Not take it seriously.
That's okay, right? That's just like the F word.
The issue of them being...
Wait, actually, I don't know. I better not say that because I don't actually know. I know that's a bad word in French. I don't know what that word means in French, and maybe I should back off from that one. So yeah.
Forced out.
Yeah,
And
chat.
again,
Don't say bad words in other languages when you don't completely understand them. Okay, that's my advice to you.
We don't have the person that came up with this issue. That's the problem.
Not one person came up with this issue. I'm telling you right
It's
now
multiple
that trans
people.
people in general in these debate spaces who try to be active members get pushed out.
Well, but the problem is also, and while I think mostly Geek is, I'm gonna say Geek is mostly just molding French right now, right?
Yes.
But the thing is, for me, it's like I hear this, but then I will be approached by other trans people who want to come on my show, and I give them that platform, and they want to come back, and they are not pushed out of the space, and they actively want to come back on the platform. And
Dylan, I gotta be honest with your takes these days. The only trans people you're gonna get, by and large, not on total, but by and large, right? The only you're gonna get a lot of assimilationists, right? And if that's what you want, if you want to take our bootlickers and platform them, that's actually not helpful to the trans community. That is like, you know, you're like, let me increase my like black representation by bringing on Jesse Lee Peterson. These are the Jesse Lee Petersons of like, and again, chat, I'm not comparing directly, right? Because like, although there might be parallels between marginalized experiences, they're not the same. So I want to make sure to emphasize that, right? It's the oppression against black people, the oppression against trans people. It's not the same, but there are some parallels, right?
this is probably one of the most safest environments on Twitch for people to engage with the right as a left winger in a controlled environment with certain controls in place so it doesn't get out of hand, right? And if
majority of trans people who came on did not come on again. Someone checked that for me.
somebody like afterwards they're sending community to
Wait, oh my god, you gotta tell me who that was. I'm curious. And did they draw a chart for you by chance? Did they draw like a chart of the was this a chart with no access? No, just kidding. I'm sure it's not my friend that I'm thinking of. I'm sure it's somebody else that did the research for you.
like harassment with anybody or anything like that, like approach us and we will absolutely ban those people. And so
again,
for me, it's
you can't ban, like you can't ban Irene as a glasses hun or whatever the fuck their names are gonna be, right? That's not a real person. That's an alt, right? You can't ban that person. I can give you the name and you can say this is not a member of my community, right? And that's true. It's like the name is not. There can be a member of your community, you know, making alts, right? But like if they're going to be doing like hardcore harassment, they're not going to be doing it under their own name. Like, does he not know about the hate rates? Like, how many cis people, how many straight people do not understand? Well, not that Dylan's straight, right? But like how many, like, you know, how many people in the larger community don't understand that the hate raids are a thing? How many people don't really know what those are about? How many people don't know about the targeted harassment, the impersonation, all the other bullshit that they use, right? I feel like it's way too many. I feel like when you don't live in our world, you don't experience what we experience. You actually have to inform yourself on this shit.
I never want to create this. I guess my goal isn't to create a perfectly safe environment for everyone involved. That is not my goal at all. My goal is to create one of the safest environments I can possibly do while doing what I'm doing. And I think that while I do want to bring on more trans people, absolutely, right? And I don't think you want me to like bring on bad trans voices or like when I say that I mean like people who are not good at debate. Not like any voice that is trans is bad, but like somebody who's not good at what we're looking for here. So he's worried about like people that don't, like, I don't know, that aren't good at debate according to his sensibilities, right? Which could be because they fucking owned him too hard, right? Let's be real. This is Dylan Birds we're talking about, right? But he's also, I think he's not noticing, like, you know, how that like leaves the door open for you to bring in, you know, the Caitlyn Jenners and the Blair Whites of the Twitch community, right? And you have.
And
I think we have different standards for what I'm looking for as what I'm like trying to put on, and like the type of voices I would bring on. One example of this is when you were on Twitter, you said all Dylan has to do is to give me a valid reason for why he won't have me on or let me on to prove it's not merely a passive aggressive attack at all the trans women who have embarrassed him, but he won't because I'm right that he wants to exploit this power, right? And when I hear this,
a lot of stuff between my jobs, by the way, and I should have thought that one through definitely, because that was not what I was thinking. I would like most of the time, if like I wasn't even thinking about me not being on the panels. So I'm sorry, that was like a lapse in judgment.
I guess when I read that, and I said this at the time, it makes me feel like it's like a personal spite that you felt.
No, I feel like that there's some frustration that's being dealt with, and sometimes when we're dealing with frustration, you know, that I don't know, that kind of stuff can come out from cis people without it defining them. And without everything else they say being put into that context. I think that's, yeah, I don't know about that, Dylan. I don't know.
Personally spited because I didn't bring you on.
I mean, if it was personal, I would have brought it up way sooner. It's just now that I'm leaving this space, it's very much like I feel bad seeing what I've seen with the treatment of trans people, their firsthand experiences that they've shared with me, and not saying anything, just like slamming the door shut and hoping to have like a better career as like, I don't know, gamer streamer or something, whatever I plan to do. And so like, for me, like I want to be very vocal that I'm leaving because it doesn't feel like I'm ever good enough for this space, because by default, there's a lot of forces working against people like me in here. The stuff I brought up about you was started by Danbo because I really was like, what qualifications? I guess you've given good enough reasons on like a surface level for why not to do what you've done, and agreeing with the idea that like I only want good debaters on there. Well, I think you're really discounting the value of experiences and people's voices on this, because I've met people who I don't think are necessarily great debaters, but when they talk about trans issue, they're trans, so they can literally just shut down falsehoods faster than most cis people, because part of being trans is going through certain things that just are undeniably true to you at that point once you've experienced them. And so it's like your space can sometimes let these things, like these counter narratives to our true existence exist much longer than they should.
So I guess for me, anytime I have a conversation,
that was all over the place. Maybe I should.
I'll address the last point. Anytime I host a conversation about trans issues, black issues, anything like this, I want to make sure I always have a trans person or a black person on that show. But I also face
This just look. I don't want to interrupt, but you're letting me interject, I guess.
Yeah, I'm letting you interject.
Just like if you're gonna have.
Oh, hey, Polly. Yeah, I'll actually. I want to check out your react to this too, Polly. I think your perspectives, as of late, have been really good.
Again, 3 transphobes on there, and just one trans person.
And welcome.
You're giving the transphobes an easier time. I'm sorry, even if you're not letting them say the quiet parts so loud.
So, I guess for me, right? I believe.
Oh, wait, will the mods let me get this one?
Okay, so I'm gonna.
I wonder if I can get this one.
But I think it's important for people to get an idea of.
Oh, the mods beat me to it.
I can't just have trans people on the shows where we're talking about trans issues. I cannot just have black people on the show where I'm just talking about black.
Just have trans people though. That's not what I'm asking.
See, like, here's what I think that like something, and I'm not talking about Dylan here. I'm talking about cis people in general. Like, there's almost like a backwards understanding about like having people on to talk about their own experience, and like it feels like a lot of you cis people have this idea that we trans people are not objective enough to speak about our own experience, that the very nature of us being trans like gives us a bias, and what you're missing is that it actually gives us an insight. Now you're proposing this sort of dichotomy where it's either got to be like all trans people, to talk about trans issues, or it's got to be, let us have our all cis panel about trans issues, right? It doesn't have to be one of those. Like the right choice is probably somewhere in between. Yeah, a panel about trans issues should have heavy trans representation, and not just the trans voices that are convenient for you or that agree with you, right? Also the trans voices that challenge you. Like that should be a priority, right? Because you know that those trans voices are going to be kept out of a lot of stuff, right? And if you really want to kind of like, if you want your program to be a voice that's like bringing light to this world, oh god, I said that in such a cheesy way, but you know what I mean, that's making things better, then you gotta fight that tendency. And like, I mean, the first step to that is being aware of it, and I think that's what Ninetails is trying to bring to your consciousness here, right?
Let me fit. I just said.
Hey, Kex Maroon.
I
But like,
fuck.
you're mischaracterizing my
No,
argument.
I'm
All
not.
I'm
You
saying
didn't
is
listen to me.
give them
You didn't listen to me. You didn't listen to me. I said this is unrelated, but I want to say this because I want to give people an idea about how I make my
Okay,
show.
fine. Sorry, I missed the unrelated part. I'll try to listen better.
Okay. I do that. I need to make sure, and I do this, I try my best to make sure I have black people in the room when we're not talking about black issues, trans people in the room because we're not talking about trans issues. Because, number one, I don't want to tokenize people. I don't want to have them on only when we're talking about trans issues or black issues, because I don't want trans or black people to feel like, oh, I have you on when we talk about the black thing. Then when we talk about like the economy or something
actually, hey,
that
Dylan,
still affects you, but just isn't.
Dylan, I think there's a good take there. There's some truth to what he's saying, right? You remember Prime Kai's Amazon Lilies program? So this was a program that was generally only it was like, I mean, I'm trying to remember like how exactly it worked, because it wasn't only women, it was all like non-men, right? Like people who weren't cis men. I think if I remember correctly how it worked, right? The problem is, instead of being used as, you know, this was, you would come on and you'd talk about very niche issues, and you would talk about, you would because the Amazon Lilies panel existed, that was like Prime's fig leaf to get out of like platforming trans people more on the main show, on the Reverie, on places like that, right? Yeah, so I think that kind of thing can like be negative, but at the same time, I don't think that Ninetails, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not asking for Amazon Lilies here, right? That's not where we're going with this. This is
black centric issue, only black issue, then we don't need the card for you anymore. I don't want anybody
to be fair, conservatives make every issue a trans issue.
ever feel like that.
Good point.
And so I always want to make sure that I bring them on so they always feel like this door is open for all conversations to all people. Right?
Oh yeah.
Now, when
Tokenization is like you have representation because you have one.
comes to specifically like a debate about the trans issue, I will always make sure that I try to have a higher than average rate of trans people on that show. Now, it will not only be trans people on that show for the left, which is usually the trans.
So earlier he alluded to a higher than average rate. He means higher than the representation of trans people in society, which Professor Dave said was around 1%. I've seen statistics that point me more to like 2.3% or something. But I think it might have to do with your definition of trans people too, right? But yeah, regardless, yeah, like he's talking about like, you know, if he can have 1% trans people and technically be in compliance with what he just said. So
the quote unquote like trans positive side, even though we do
all
have
thing
people like
trans
Top
everything
Taj who,
happens
like, ride
twice
the
a
middle
week
or
now.
Ride the center right?
Well,
And I
because
do.
the trans movement is an emancipatory movement, so as soon as you concede to reactionary talking points, you've kind of like moved
there's
your
a drag-
ability to
there was a-
actually advocate for it.
There was a drag panel where there was no trans people to defend the attacks. Oh, Maddie's great. Maddie's great.
Trans people are truly fighting.
So you're saying by even having the debate in and of itself, and including
Black-led discussions on black issues is not the same thing as white liberal monetization. Blood sport debates over our liberation. Not
right.
twice a week. Okay.
I guess for me, like right now, we just went off the presidency of Donald Trump, and we are seeing a huge spike in anti-trans rhetoric, and we've seen a lot of anti-trans rhetoric.
I'm not trying to call Dylan out here, But I will point out that it's been 2 years since Trump. It may not feel like it, but it's true.
Unanimously queer rhetoric in the United States.
Wait, am I right about that? 1.5 years, sorry.
And for me, I believe that these spaces are going to exist in our space and have a social purpose. A social purpose to either A, equip people with the tools necessary to dismantle these arguments. B, I think it is necessary for democracy to function, for discussions to occur between.
Look, I don't want to drag anyone here, okay? I don't want to blame anyone, but I'm looking around these panels and I'm not seeing a lot of utility, okay? And there's a lot of reason for that, and I would rather look at the systems rather than the individuals here, right? Because like I said, everybody knows that me and Dylan had our thing like, you know, like a year or so ago, right? I'm not trying to relitigate that. I'm not trying to relive that. And I'm not, you know, I certainly don't want to, I'm not getting angry, okay? And I'm not placing the blame. I definitely, the biggest thing I want to avoid is placing inordinate blame on Dylan. I want to be really clear in saying that there are a lot of panels, there are a lot of platforms that have this same problem, and Dylan is not the worst by far, right? So just with that caveat, right? Because we're not trying to be mean here. We're not trying to, saddle one person with the blame for something that's systemic. But we do need people like Dylan to recognize this, right? And I think that Ninetails does a great job of trying to, bring this to Dylan's consciousness. And it does feel like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but is it percolating a little bit with Dylan? Ninetails, do you feel like anyway, I'll bring you on in a second and maybe we can see what you think about, like, if it's getting through, right?
Between people who disagree, but that just applies to all issues. I can understand how you could say, like, this issue doesn't really necessarily need to be discussed, but I'm just saying, like, in democracy, discussions need to happen if you want to live in
big mood, Amerife.
Democracy, right? And like, I also believe that on these shows, generally it is the left and trans people who do the best in these trans debates. And when it comes to this idea of like, well, it needs to be like for every transphobe, there needs to be another trans person checking them, right? I match these debates up like Pokemon. I'm a Pokemon master and I gotta catch them all, right? When it comes to my debates. I try to specifically set it up so that I know that the people on this side are going to be able to defend the points that they're saying, or they're going to be able to engage and have that that engagement. And it is not, if I just pour personal experience on one side of the debate for trans people, it's going to get complicated if there's a statistical argument that is made, or if there is a science something argument that's made that is outside the bounds of somebody's personal experience. Somebody, for example, I'm queer, but if someone was to ask me the percentage of gay people who have to go through homelessness or like something that I don't know the specifics about, then it's going to be a trouble for me. But if I have somebody on with me who might not even be gay, who might have that, then us together are going to be able to make the better argument. And I'm matching it up like that in these debates. So to me, it's not just about like, for every transphobe, we must have a trans voice. It's about how can we best set up this side, the left-wing side, not for failure, but how can we set them up so we know that they can make these arguments effectively and are well equipped to deal with the debate ahead.
Basically just want to give a closing statement at this point. If you want to follow up with one as well, then I guess Dippie has anything to say. Because I am getting pretty tired. I had a lot to do today. So.
Here's how you close a debate with Dylan Burns. Dylan, now you can't hear. Now you can't see. This is what it's like to be a trans person in your audience.
Okay.
Is that cool?
Just kidding.
Sure. I guess like.
And then you send the motherfucker to the Shadowverse.
I guess for me,
While he's trying to play Pokemon, we're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Sorry, Dylan. Trap card activated.
I feel weird.
Change of heart.
About this debate altogether, because I feel like the words that we're using in this
Oh my God, you feel weird about this debate, Dylan. This is such an opportunity for you. This is such a fucking opportunity. Don't feel weird. Don't feel weird. Don't be scared, homie.
conversation are very different from like the
Does he know that reference, chat? Do you think he knows that reference?
words. Like for example, when we talked about violence, the reason why I reacted so viscerally to that is because these words, when heard in this space, like once you use a different word in place of another word that you could use, like for example, harassment, once we use violence, it's going to be interpreted very different than by most people. The same way that if I said,
Dylan, like again, there's a disconnect, okay? You don't understand that like what you're interpreting as like some angry words in DMs from strangers are sometimes like physical threats or like, you know, threats to violate your sexual autonomy, right? That's where this shit goes when you get messed up people into this, right? And that's the equation, that's the part of the equation that you're not seeing. Like I said, most of your audience, although I disagree with them, and I feel like, you know, there's a lot of lack of understanding of trans issues there's a lot of lack of knowledge, right? I don't think they're bad people, right? But there's a few messed up people mixed in with them, and it only takes one or two, or in my case, three, okay, to really fucking fuck you up for a year, to really make you feel scared, to question your safety every time you go outside, Dylan. I'm not sure you know what that feels like. I'm not sure you understand, right? And so I think that Ninetails' use of the word violence here is absolutely appropriate. I don't think it's overblown. I don't think it's hyperbole. I think that you aren't getting it. You aren't understanding that it's not an exaggeration at all, okay?
this is a riot versus a insurrection, right? This situation is going to be treated very differently, right? When we use these words that might have, like I just want to make sure we're using the word that is going to describe to the most people what we accurately mean. And that's why I had the most visceral reaction to that. And when it comes to like my space and like not platforming like true leftists, like I do believe I platform true leftists. I think leftists always disagree about what a true leftist is. So one leftist saying that other leftists are not true leftists is just run-of-the-mill leftism.
I think you're allergic to true leftists, but whatever. I'm not going to dwell on it.
I'm sure that some people would tell me you're not a true leftist because you're not of the right stripe of Pol Potism or whatever the fuck.
Hey, listen, Pol Pot did. No, just kidding. I'm not going to defend Pol Pot.
Right.
Just
So,
kidding, chat.
for
Just
me, like,
not funny.
hearing
Not
from
funny.
A socialist or a Marxist or whatever you call yourself when it comes to like a leftist.
Fucking Pol.
Like say that I
Okay.
don't
Pol Potism. Come
have
on.
enough true leftists on when I have Kevin Logan and Vosh and Lonerbox and
Oh my
Demon Mama
God.
and all these.
No! Oh my God, Dylan! Oh, jeez. Okay, now no shade on any of those people. Okay, I'm not calling any of those people bad people, right? But those are some leftists that a lot of leftists have problems with, right? Those are people that would practice what like most people would call watered down leftism, and that's what I mean when I say you're allergic to you know to real leftism, right? Is that you'll take a million loner boxes, a million Voshes over like, can you imagine, like I'm trying to think, like if Bad Empanada came up to the Dippie. Didn't Chaos's Mel used to?
These people, like I guess I would just say like I'm positive all of these people would disagree with you, that they would.
Chat, what I'm saying is I may be an anarchist cat girl, okay, but I look really good on top of a tank, really fucking good on that tank.
Would say they're true leftists. And
I just need the right tank pirate to the pirate pilot. Wait, what is it called? What is a tank pilot? I don't know, chat. Oh my God!
Well,
You gotta stop! You gotta
yeah.
stop! Tanky posting no comment
and,
chick.
like, finally,
Stop it!
I guess like for me, I don't want to create an environment that excludes trans people at all. I want to create an environment where people feel it is the safest place for them to engage with people who they regularly would not be able to in other parts.
But I mean, in all truth, in the interest of not blaming one person, Dylan Burns, for something that's a systemic problem, I'd say that a lot of the true leftists have been kept out of the spaces. I'd say that a lot of the true leftists have been canceled, right? That you're not the only one who's allergic to actual leftists, Dylan. And, you know, that makes it hard. That makes it hard when you believe that somebody, you know, the Vosh calls somebody a genocide denialist, and you're like, okay, I guess they're a genocide denialist. Listen, I'm sorry. Miss me with horsecock McFuckers analysis of like, you know, who should be deplatformed, okay? Miss me with that shit, okay?
Of Twitch. In Twitch, there's not a lot of spaces where people can engage with the right. It just doesn't exist. Mine is one of the few that they can. And I think it's important to keep the space not only partially entertained, but also grounded in what the reality is in the majority of this country. Because the reality of this country is not people are around a table like debating like, what are we going to go for, syndicalism or anarchy?
Okay, so I want to make sure that like what I'm saying, that I don't like, I'm not like that like, it's not that like I have a real like tight definition for who like a true leftist is, right? It's more that like the people that Dylan brought out were like Lonerbox, right? So Lonerbox was different about a year ago, but the last I heard of Lonerbox was having a discussion with Samantha Banana about how like truly progressive agendas can be accomplished by platforming hard right people. Like, and Lonerbox was like, you know, like Vosh, I don't think we have to go over that. Some people love Vosh. Some people really don't love Vosh. Obviously, I've pointed out a lot of problems with Vosh, and I'm not going to relitigate those here. Let's see. Lonerbox, Vosh. Who else did Dylan say? I'm trying to remember like who the other ones that he brought up were. It was just like the ones that he brought up were just like people that are barely leftist, if like leftist at all, you know, like somebody that defends aristocracy's take on Israel-Palestine. That's so far off from like, I don't know. There's it's a little bit disqualifying, right? And like personally, I got no problem with Lonerbox. I think Lonerbox, you know, I've talked to Lonerbox. I think, you know, Lonerbox it seems to be a good person, but I just feel like that Lonerbox is really drifting in terms of ideology, and there's a lot of perverse incentives there to sort of keep true leftists. Hey, I would say though, Polly, you're asking like who are the true leftists? They're not the people getting platformed by Twitch politics, yeah? They're the people that are threatening to Twitch politics. Oh my gosh, how could you platform them, right? It's like, you know, there's been a big effort, and it's like, let me give Dylan some credit, because I'm not talking about with Dylan's network, with Dylan's Clout Network. I'm talking about mainly with the Twitch Politics Clout Network, at canceling and gatekeeping, you know, actual leftists out of there. So
communism, right? The reality of this country is we're debating.
Okay, here's a good one. Ask Vera. Ask Vera is a great example of a real leftist.
Mainstream conservatism, which has extremely queerphobic, extremely transphobic. We engage it on a national level, on a local level. And
Mixed Vivian Wolf.
I want to make sure people are grounded in that, and I want to make sure that the conversations that we're having, the debates we're having,
Ninetails Cosmic
feel
Fox,
relevant to people's everyday life and what they see in media and what they consume. But I also understand that the mainstream is harmful. Mainstream America, when it comes to trans and queer people, is extremely harmful, and that's why I put the controls I do in place. But I would never advocate for anybody to ever come on my show.
I do also want to say that there's probably a lot of people whose takes, whose beliefs, whose theoretical grounding I'm not super familiar with that probably qualify too, right? So yeah, there's probably a lot of true leftists that I don't even know enough to identify, right? Because I don't know everything about everybody's, you know, point of view.
Show if they felt like they couldn't handle what my show is. But if there's ever any instance of harassment after a show or something like that, if anyone wants to send me like evidence of that.
Oh my god, it's the
then I will
Vosh take. It's the
ban that
Vosh
person
take.
permanently, because I do not allow that behavior.
It's also the Destiny takes. Listen, if there's ever any harassment going on, get in contact with right to bear arms or right to arm bears or something like that. It's one of his mods, and he was just always just get into contact with him and like let me give Irene for male prison name to Vosh, to you know what I mean, to Vosh's people, so they can ban. Oh yeah, actually that person's not in our community. Oh, surprise, surprise. Yeah, because it's an alt. It's a and they make them like that, you know. So yeah, no, we can't do that. It doesn't work. And that's what Dylan, like, this is what I'm really wondering, okay? Like, because Polly's experienced this shit. I think Ninetails has experienced this stuff. I think a lot of trans creators have experienced like hate raids. I feel like the way that Dylan's talking, it gives me the feeling that he doesn't understand the reality of those situations, right? And what the harm to a community actually is. I don't know if he gets it. I'm not sure.
Platform, and I would even have conversations with the community members involved. As in, I would, if let's say it came from somebody else's community.
And that's why you can't give the name, because we don't know the name.
Person is harassing other guests.
I mean, we might have some guesses, but guesses like as to who it is. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's an account on Twitch that got made like 5 minutes ago or something, right? So your guess is, you know, in a lot of cases, your guess is as good as mine.
Please make them stop, because if we keep having this issue from your community, it's going to be hard to have you on again. And I'd be willing to even do that. Which is actually, I think this is, I don't think we've done that before, but I would be willing to make that change if it made people feel more welcome.
I mean, look, Dylan, I want to give you credit. I believe that you're trying to do something good here, and I respect that. But like, for the reasons I've given, that's not going to help us, right? We can't identify who the people are that are doing the harassment, because guess what, Dylan? They know that you might ban them, and they don't want to get banned from your community, so they're not going to use their fucking main, right? That's the problem. And hopefully somebody can explain that to you.
You know, the point was for this discussion to maybe give some perspective on some things that are going on that, like I said, bother me, leaving the space by no longer doing panels. Yeah, so I do appreciate you having me on to talk, of course. I actually didn't expect that. I'm just going to say, but mostly because a lot of the other times I reached out, you didn't respond, but maybe you were busy or something. I guess that's possible too. There's a lot of subjectivity in what you're saying, like the standards are and stuff like that. And I get that, like, from an optics standpoint, it's respectable, at least, to like not want trans people to lose debates. However, given the subjectivity of the standards for who will win a debate, and the countering forces that I've pointed out, like how always rehashing these discussions kind of makes it seem like it actually never ends, you know, debate, and the debate is never won. Really, you know, we have to question what's actually going on here. And so like the reason I'm saying violence specifically is because that's what it ends up being for trans people. Now, it may not be the case for like people looking at this from the top down and saying like, what is this? That makes sense. And I can agree with that. It's all I'm going to say is that it takes a little bit of creativity to understand it. And that's also kind of like coming around what the solutions are, because I don't actually know the specifics of your platform.
Good question, Polly. Good question.
You've made this entire time, but I also kind of recognize and am worried by the idea that you can't actually get rid of a lot of the people that will generate entertainment if you were to recognize the subversive, and that's the key word here, subversive ways that trans people become targeted through that. That's why I brought up the issue of scale. And I'm not asking you to get rid of your platform. I do think you can find ways to spread out your power amongst other people, and that could be a great way to be a trans ally, such as other trans people who might have panels, you know, collaborating with them and stuff like that. Because especially like with inexperience, I know that like I've tried to have a couple of panels, and I wish I had a little bit of like support on that. Stepping out just some other points. The biggest reason these spaces remain violent, though, is because we always try to like characterize these things with like with specifics and words, but in reality, like that's not how people harass trans people. That's not how this stuff works. They literally look at what we're saying that we're looking for, and they start doing something else, something deeper, to the point where we don't even actually always know what we did specifically to cause this. It just usually correlates with the last time we, embarrass somebody on a panel or something. At least for me.
True.
I can't speak for all trans
True.
This is probably a little bit more complicated for others than it is for me. I also say that, like, personally, as far as like death threats and stuff like that go,
I'm maybe on Amber Heard. Stardust had a good take. I haven't checked it out, but I heard. Oh God, I heard. I'm not trying to make a cheap pun. I literally heard that, not trying to pun off of Amber Heard's last name. But I heard that one wasn't as bad. Is Dylan not trans? And did he not work in the state house for a governor? Like, why are we explaining this to them? Dylan, is definitely not trans. Worked for in a state house for a governor. I know he's done a few things. The one that comes to mind is that he was a foreign policy consultant, I believe, for the Gravel campaign when Mike Gravel ran. Which was when 2016, maybe, or
they wouldn't affect me much anyways, because I
wasn't trying to pun.
Not worrying about that.
I promise.
Also in terms of like that emotional attachment stuff. But when I can't detach as easily from hearing what other people go through, and that's what's hardest for me, is that we have this barrier of like, well, how is? Oh my God,
Buffy, that emote is amazing. I love your emote, like, Buffy.
If
your meow,
what trans people were saying about the issue, especially all the people who were more confident in these spaces and have fallen away, if their voices weren't minimized, specifically by a lot of the time being told that they're crazy, then I don't think it'd be as hard to recognize these issues. It's almost as if they got pushed out because they were able to recognize the issue, not by you, but more like the spaces that actually use that violence. And so it worries me that your space is going to become more and more isolated. You're going to continually attract more and more people with the spectacle, and it's going to keep the conversation from actually ever moving forward in the true online zeitgeist. And you pointed out like the words thing. For the most part, the words that like trans people and like the minorities need to describe their oppression will be a little bit different than what the words that like normal people use to describe things would be, simply because like their problems exist outside of what is normally viewed by the status quo. And so if we're talking about like, in terms of being trans allies specifically, recognizing forms of violence that...
Sir Hunter Kaiser Wilhelm, Henry Kissinger, he has the diplomatic skills and control of a week-old tuna fish sandwich dunked in the Hudson River.
Are allocated for trans people, which don't exist within our normative views of violence, is a very important way of making sure that these things don't perpetuate. So I get that, like, I see what you're saying with like not being confusing about violence and stuff like that. I don't feel like this is something I would probably try to refer to a couple other sources and then write down like a summary for, because it is complicated and I'm not great at making lists in my head. So I'll defer to that, to like, if you're interested, try to look into more about like, how specifically the left talks about social violence, and also this thing called biopolitics. I know Foucault read about it, and Foucault's like this philosophically brain dude, but there's lots of good videos that summarize it, and I think that there is a biopolitical situation going on here. Not so much of like the body, but more so the ability to exist in this space. So I have to make that distinction there. But if we're not thinking about this, if we're not like, and you are thinking about this, it does sound like, so then things can get really bad. It's just my position, which is why I said like the hands on the control thing.
One last question before this wraps up. You said that like my only like purpose of bringing on like the trans people I bring on, I only bring on trans people with clout. and that's like my barriers. Like if you have clout as a trans person, then you get on my show. If you're a trans person without clout, you basically get fucked, right? My main barrier, I mean, obviously, like viewership plays into everything we book because we want to book a show that gets high viewership. That's business.
You've already said you're the biggest, so when does that lose priority?
Well, because I want to get bigger, always. I always want to grow. I mean, I'm a businessman.
But then this problem's going to get more and more out of control.
Well, no, because the thing is, the bigger my platform gets, the more valuable the platform gets, and so the bigger it gets, the more useful will be to platform trans people who are smaller viewership, which I do.
Yeah, well, Polly, if your argument is that the Hippie Dippie is not the worst offender as far as transphobia, I'd agree. Like, I've always said that, like, you know, that a lot of the, like, panel spaces, you know, like, a lot of the bigger panel spaces are, you know, have that. We're not talking, as far as I understand, we're talking about, like, implicit transphobia, not, like, you know, outright explicit transphobia, right? And I mean, I am going to bring on Ninetails. That might be a good question for me to ask her when she comes on. If you're still, are you still down to do that, Ninetails?
I mean, just last platform, again, I platformed a trans masculine person who doesn't have a huge audience. I'm not trying to be painted as a hero for that.
The world is transphobic, but Dylan's trying to be a trans ally, right? And, you know, if you want to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk, right? It's not just like you know, it's not just a tag you get to put on yourself without any effort, right? And I would say that, like, the way that I've seen, you know, transphobia manifest, and, you know, to be fair, like, I'm trying to remember, it wasn't Dylan's community, right? It was, like, you know, just like in the systemic sort of selection of people for the program, maybe the way that they get treated when they're on the program, whether their voices are taken seriously or not. There's, you know, a certain degree of fragility that Dylan has demonstrated in terms of, you know, just like you see how defensive he's getting, for instance, right? When I see this, or I think back to my debate with Dylan, I see two opportunities for Dylan to learn something, to make his show better, and to actually benefit, like, materially from showing that he's learned that, to gain the trust of trans people. And, you know, he missed them. Now, does it mean that he's a transphobic asshole? No. Does he mean that he wakes up every day thinking of how he can screw over trans people? Hell no, right? I think he's trying. I think he's sincere that he wants to be an ally. I just think that he is so fucking detached. Like, you heard him talk about, like, his conception of harassment versus what we've experienced as trans creators, right? Brother Malcolm has a bigger audience than CTV. So he will limit trans voices and engage in silencing campaigns against people. And again, I'm not trying to drag out, like, you know, the thing that happened with me, you know, a year or more ago, right? I'm not trying to relitigate that or anything like that, right? So, but yeah, I have, you know, up close and personal experience with that, and, like, kind of the harassment that came in its wake, right? And again, like I said, I don't think it was Dylan's audience. I think most of his audience, like, they'd come in, they'd say, I think you're wrong, you're an asshole, and that's fine, right? That's not harassment. I don't consider that harassment. That is par for the course, okay? If they want to say that I'm an asshole, if I was a super meanie butt to their fave, like, I understand them being mad, okay? But we're talking about, like, some kind of messed up individuals that don't just do that are a lot more underhanded in their targeting of a person that you know, tells them that their fave is problematic, right? Or makes their fave visibly uncomfortable in his seat, right?
Or something. But
yeah,
I need to have a big platform, and I need to give my platform big for it to even be useful in the first place.
And sorry that I spoke in absolutes. It was just me being lazy. I'm sorry.
Okay, I just think a lot of people I want to emphasize that the only reason that we're even having this conversation in the first place is because I have this platform, right? And if I didn't make a lot of
how many leftist black trans women does he platform?
decisions I did make to get it to where it is, we wouldn't even have the platform in the first place. And so if I make a lot of changes fundamentally to what made my platform what it is and what made it big, if I make too much change to the point where it's no longer what it was, it shells for what it used to be, we're not platforming right-wingers of a quality anymore that people want to tune in to watch, or we're not platforming the stars people tune in to watch for, then I can run into an issue where we're not going to have the conversation.
Did you also think that sticking with your current format might get stale, right? Now, I get what you're saying there, and it's true that, like, even a YouTube channel, just think of a YouTube channel, right? If I build my channel on debate analysis and then I shift gear to something completely different, can I expect all the people that followed me, that subscribed to me for debate analysis to necessarily be interested in that other thing? No, some will, some won't, right? So I get what he's saying there, right? You got to kind of stick with what built your brand. At the same time, though, if I stick with what built my brand and I never evolve and I never progress and I never move forward, I think that might have an audience drop off too, right? So there's probably a middle ground there.
Conversation anymore because the platform I've had is gone. It's no longer the size it was. A great example of this, the Hippie Championship is something that gets a lot of criticism, and I would assume from your criticisms, you probably don't like it very much. It probably is like the pinnacle of this kind of
it probably triggers you.
Entertainment-based.
Triggered!
Like, politics is for fun.
I'm triggered, Dylan!
That gets a lot of
Dylan! I'm a triggered SJW! Triggered! Sorry, I had to do it.
Which...
I had to do it.
Politics
I had to do
shouldn't really just be like this, like, oh, like, wow.
Oh my gosh.
I also engage in
I'm being
real
super
politics.
late. I'm being super loud, super late at night.
For
I
me,
hope my roommates aren't getting
I wouldn't
pissed
have
off.
this platform if it wasn't for that type of stuff. And my viewership has declined after I stopped the Hippie Championship, reflecting the fact that this is part of the stuff that gave me this platform in the first place.
I really want to do something that's actually kind of inspired by competitive nature, but relies on teamwork and people to absolutely be prepared in order to, quote, win. Whereas my biggest criticism of the Hippie Championship is that it was a spectacle, and whoever won the spectacle, not who was the most prepared to actually win the debate, because even being informed is a performative.
Like, I've got opinions about this in terms of the quality of entertainment even represented by the Hippie Championship, but I'm gonna keep that to myself because it's like, I understand that taste is subjective, and if people appreciated, the Hippie Championship, people appreciated the Hippie Championship. It's just that where it gets dicey is that, like, this weird little world in between kayfabe, Dylan, or kayfab, which you should appreciate, Dylan. Do you not appreciate fab things, Dylan? Tell me. I've never heard. What do you think? What? He got so mad that I called it kayfab. He motherfucker gatekept me for not knowing enough about wrestling. Listen, I could give my opinions about wrestling fans, but I'll probably keep them to myself because I don't want to yuck other people's yums. And other people really like wrestling, and that's great, in some ways wrestling is a performance art. I can respect that. I can get with that. It's not my cup of tea, but everybody's got their own thing. So
I think to some degree I can be very informed, but I really
it's more important to wrestle than to say trans rights to Dylan.
I 100% know that there's something like that going on there. I think that what you're saying applies to people who aren't established, but I think that your argument falls apart with the bigger you get, and especially when people are saying, like, look, the airtime and the viewership that you're kind of hoarding in a way keeps them away from us, and they're not viewing us because you're doing these huge spectacles that attracts people on less informed bases than what they're trying to do. And yeah, I think part of, like, if you're gonna say that, like, being
I love this shit. Dylan, can you describe to us what 20% of silver sounds? Oh my god, nice. This is bullshit. It's not like you are under a contract. You can make separate channels. Oh, true. Yeah, that's actually a good point. Yeah, you can make separate channels, diversify, test out new ideas. He ain't sticking to what works. Dylan wants the money, nothing else. There, like I said, there's a lot of perverse incentives that drive the way, like in a lot of ways, if we are not conscious about the effects of our platform above and beyond what makes money, we're getting socially engineered by the algorithm, right? And that's probably, if I were to really, you know, touch base with Dylan on a personal like note, I think that I could get him to agree that he doesn't want to completely give his content over to the algorithm, right? And its incentives, because like that is like literally just like, okay, fucking socially engineer me.
People being informed is taking a backseat, then specifically trans people have a reason to be worried, because that means that like misinformation can slide through when, say for instance, certain trans allies aren't keen enough to know when things that incite violence against trans people.
Oh, you might have to go lay down. Yeah, Ninetails, this was a really awesome debate, though. I just want you to understand that I really enjoyed your I think you did amazing. I think you completely kept your composure. You're obviously very aware of how any sort of display of emotion or, you know, beyond a certain point is received by this audience. And you know, I you know, Matt, respect, right? This was a really good debate for you. I feel like, you know, you looked good. I think that the reason that people like Chud Logic were giving you so much shit is because they feel threatened, right? I think that Chud Logic sees your criticism, and maybe senses how applicable they might be to his own platform. I heard that he was trying to talk shit about you on stream today, and you know, just to understand like who he is and why that is, like, yeah, Chud's basically leaving the left, right? That's who he is. He's our Dave Rubin. He's the Dave Rubin of Twitch.
I guess for me, like, we put a lot of disclaimers about like, please go get other sources. Do not use this as a primary source of information.
People just naturally do that. That's just human behavior.
That is just human behavior, yes. But to have debate is to know that somebody could bring in misinformation, and it is the people who comes on responsibility in many ways to like counter that misinformation. I can't, there's not really, even like if you look at like CNN debates or like the high level debates like between presidential candidates, a lot of times like misinformation seeps through, and it is the other candidate's responsibility in order to counter the misinformation that they hear. And that's what I put at the responsibility of the other panelists when they're
Wait, I don't know if that's true.
And it's part of the reason why we put these content warnings on.
Chat, what do you think about that? What do you think about that? Like, the idea that it's like, you know, if Donald Trump comes out and says that BoJack Horseman is the shit, and everyone should use BoJack Horseman. Yeah. I mean, I don't think Donald Trump's ever actually said that, but like, you know, for instance, right? I would expect the network to counter that, right? And I think Dylan would expect that too. So.
And it's a content warning that even like mainstream like debates don't have. It's about this misinformation.
Moderators counter misinformation in German debates, in German television debates.
So I've made most of the points I need to make. All I say is that there is a point, and I think you should recognize this. There's a point to where things do get out of control, where something can become a threat to the trans people in this space, and it's so big and so crazy all the time because you have so many replies in your tweets or whatever that it's hard to keep track of.
Yeah,
and
I don't answer all my replies. I just noticed that for some reason I don't get notifications. It feels like this. It feels like on people who disagree with me, somehow Twitter doesn't give me notifications. I swear to God, I don't even know. Like, I saw that there was like, I had posted something this week, and somebody disagreed with me and was like asking me a question, and I didn't even like see it until like 5 days later.
You asked if like the Hippie Dippie being removed would be ideal. It's like, no, I actually think that there are topics that would be great.
I'm heaven banned. Yeah, basically.
I think that there are also topics that just allow like I said, reactionaries to have more privilege in those spaces through means of not just appearance that I explained. So it's not as simple as just bringing trans people on, unfortunately. You said that you do other forms of media, and I do often link those forms of media. So I would say 100%, you don't have to do these panels anymore. You're established. You have your stake in everything. Believe it or not. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but there's probably actually like a lot more you could do from this point than to do the same thing over and over again, preventing people who are trying to do the same thing, possibly with different dynamics, and possibly who may be trans themselves, to have that space that you're occupying.
Wait a second. I gotta wrap this up because people are sleeping in that. So I want to say, like, I'm sorry, there's so many things, but I want to make sure I put a bow on this. There's two things I wanted to say. I guess for me, when it comes to the death
Is he doing
stuff,
ASMR? What is this?
To me, I guess it's harder for that to have an impact on me. Like when I hear it, I know it's bad, but like I guess for me, like I've kind of normalized that a little bit in my brain because as a streamer, like death threats are almost like a part of the business. And I'm not saying that as in like it's okay, but it's like kind of just something like you just deal with. And I'm not trying to say it's okay. It's just like it's so normalized, sadly. It's like, for example, swatting. Like it is something that literally should come with like prison time, but it's something as a streamer where we just kind of accept the risk because like that's just the business we're in. And for me, it's like I deal with it in a really weird way personally because like the way people make death threats to me is, hey, I'm trying to geolocate this picture you took so I can give this information to the Russian government so they could kill you, right? In fucking Ukraine, which is like a really weird way that I think a lot of people don't like experience, is this ever-present threat of like people actually trying to get you killed, legitimately get you killed.
Yeah,
like,
no, like
I don't want to like make this pity party, but it's like a weird thing. So I understand that it's bad, but I guess it's also maybe hard for me to relate to like how do we stop the death threats? Because I'm just like, I don't know, like even if I stopped the show, I would still be getting death threats anyway. Everybody would still be getting death threats. It's just the only difference is we have a large crowd here, and with more crowd, there's going to be more people who would make death threats. So this is like a whole internet issue, not just a my show issue. And lastly, when you talk about the size of my show, I don't look at my show relative to the size of political Twitch because I believe political Twitch is not like my end goal, like period. I want to like always grow outside into the rest of Twitch or to the rest of YouTube or like make my shows bigger. It's part of the reason why I'm in Ukraine. This is not the area like political Twitch is supposed to touch, which is like this really real life like journalism. But that's not like where I limit myself to. I want to do stuff outside of that sphere. I want to do stuff that's bigger than that. I always think in that way.
Oh, wait. Oh, is he saying everybody where he is asleep? I thought because I don't know if they're doing this live. To my understanding, it might be live on Ninetails' end, but I don't think it is on Dylan's end. And so when he says like people are sleeping, I thought at first he was saying that the debate was boring. He was actually saying that people literally where he is, like in it's sleepy time in Ukraine, and so that's why the ASMR voice. I understand now.
That's why I was even like planning a while ago to do like an in-person mega Hippie championship event in an actual wrestling ring, like. The whole shabab, we would have like fireworks, and it would be like, because I'm always thinking in that way, because I want to make it bigger, because I can only help people grow to the amount of influence and power I have and to the amount of platform I have. And so if I want to help people build real careers out of this, I gotta have a real audience,
and listen, if we want to build a real trans community, we got to do it outside these debate bro clout networks, okay? They're always going to shit on us. They're always going to blackball us, right? They're always going to undersell us, right? And that's why we got to build our own parallel structures, right? For when their tower comes down, and it 100% will, okay? This shit isn't stable. People are sick of this dog shit debate bro culture, and they're looking for something new, right? We're actually building audiences out of the decaying remains of what they created, because guess what? Ozymandias,
platform, which right now isn't even that big. Like I'm
putting money over human lives is where we got what got us in this mess in the first place.
So yeah, I think I will try to make this the last thing I say. I don't know. I'm pretty impulsive, so. But for me, it's like, it saddens me to know that I guess like the best chances that people have from breaking out of a certain or the chances that people have from being at your level where they can also do that are limited by whether or not A, you have the capacity to do that, B, you think you have the right balance of disagreement, which again I don't think needs to come from platforming right-wingers. I think you can be more creative than that. And most importantly,
here's an idea, Dylan. Like, give us questions that we're genuinely not sure of, right? I don't have a question of is CTV maybe right? Is Rob Noor maybe right? But there are questions that you can interrogate that aren't that, right? And there are people that you've written off of your show, right? That could pose some of those questions, that could give you contention. You bring up Mel, Chaos's Mel versus Lonerbox? That's a debate I want to see, but you people have fucking canceled Mel. And for what, a pleady face? Like, she didn't even say what y'all claimed that she said. You fucking intimidated me into disavowing her. And that's another fucking mistake that I made. Right? That I can't undo. I can never gain back Mel's trust for that, right? And, you know, she shouldn't trust me, right? She shouldn't.
Like, okay, I lost my point. Like I said, I'm getting tired.
Real quick.
If you want to respond to that.
Mr. Geek.
Jump in on one thing.
That's what he looks like?
Sorry,
Sure.
Dylan. This idea that like if Dylan like stopped his show, like the platform,
Nobody fucking started the show.
the panel scene is like not distributed.
If we do not do it, someone else will. I know what you're saying. Yeah, it's the attention economy. You don't understand.
There are many, and if you don't want trans people to be
Set, or if they do, they
agree with that, I still think it's really low. Specifically, like you're it has
Hey guys,
nothing to do with me being trans.
Yes. Why?
I can properly do.
There's like a little back and forth between
No, that doesn't.
Melanie and Mr.
Like,
Geek
I'm
here.
sorry, this notion of like
Numbers aren't causal though. It doesn't actually tell me why. It just tells me that you've done better.
yes. Why? Like that's the question. Why do you think that?
So if I don't do it, someone else must. They would come along and they would do an even worse show. So it would be a show, Aristocracy and Doobie's Hippie Dippie Championship. Let me tell you, it will be much worse. Danabo, get in here. Get in here. Tell them about Samantha Banana. She will be doing Danabo. Yeah, I've heard this shit before. I've fucking heard this shit before. I know this argument.
Yes.
And for reasons that ultimately push out trans people and allow reactionaries to have dominance over your spaces.
I don't agree with that premise at all. You
Okay.
haven't demonstrated. Like, I'm sorry, I'm going to do the has meme, but like, yeah, you didn't. We asked you
I've
an
explained
example,
why.
and you haven't provided them. I'm sorry.
But the reason
I
why
cannot
is
take
the
your
thing
blame
that
at
trans
this point.
people are experiencing, which, to my point,
Yeah,
the fact
again, discounting trans people's experience, right? Like, I guess we're not objective enough to make that call.
that that's not enough.
You trans people, you have a vested interest in the outcome of this situation.
For you shows why this problem persists in these spaces, because when people hear that it's a problem, they're like, I can't see it in a way that I relate to, so it's not good enough for me.
It has nothing
And-
to do with you being trans and everything with you, like, personally, and that's the problem.
It has
Hey guys, we
nothing
gotta-
to do with me being trans. I don't
shut
know.
it down.
Okay.
Shut it down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pretty tired.
Hey guys, see you later.
I do not blame you for being tired. This is a very tiring debate. But I think Ninetails performed admirably. I really enjoyed watching this debate. If you have not already, give Ninetails a follow. I think you'll be glad you did. Let's see who else came in here.